They left behind more than ruins. The alphabet you are reading, the names of months on your calendar, the laws buried in modern constitutions, all trace back to a single civilization that once stretched its influence across continents. Latin, the language of Rome, became the root of today's Romance tongues, spoken across half the world. Long before trade networks and international treaties, there was Pax Romana, the Roman peace, a vast system that connected cultures from the sands of Africa to the fog-draped Isles of Britain. It was the ancient world's first glimpse of globalization, where armies, merchants, and ideas moved freely beneath a single imperial banner. To understand how this came to be, we must journey across 12 centuries, a rise from obscurity, a transformation into empire, and a fall that reshaped the very identity of civilization. The story we're about to enter is not merely history, it is the origin story of the modern world. Before Rome was an empire, it was nothing more than a small settlement perched beside the river Tiber, a modest cluster of huts surrounded by hills and opportunity. Its location was no accident. To the north lived the Etruscans, a brilliant and mysterious people whose language still defies full translation. To the south, Greek colonists dotted the coasts, bringing art, philosophy, and trade. Rome arose at the crossroads between these civilizations, absorbing influences like a sponge placed at the center of a flowing stream. From its inception, it was not a closed tribe, but an open refuge, welcoming runaways, exiles, and fugitives, granting them what no other ancient city dared to offer, the chance to become Roman. The Romans believed their bloodline began far away, with survivors of the Trojan War. According to legend, the hero Aeneas journeyed across the Mediterranean, and his descendants, Romulus and Remus, were destined to found a new civilization, raised, it was said, by a she-wolf. The brothers quarreled over the site of their future capital. Romulus struck down Remus and gave his own name to the city. Though mythic in form, this story reveals a truth. Rome was born in struggle, ambition, and destiny. Over generations, 7 kings would shape early Rome, some legendary, some Etruscan in origin. Each king contributed a pillar of Rome's identity: calendars to mark Roman time, drainage systems to civilize Roman land, temples to honor Roman gods. The Etruscans, in particular, left deep marks on Roman life. From them came the use of the arch, the gladiatorial spectacle, the organization of armies, and even the alphabet, modified from Greek letters to form what would become Latin. Yet beneath these innovations, Rome held fiercely to its defining ideal, a rugged, disciplined way of life that prized duty over luxury. How did a small city among many begin its march toward world dominance? Not through isolation, but through absorption. From day one, Rome was building not just walls, but identity. Rome's transformation from kingdom to republic began not in triumph, but in outrage. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, ruled with arrogance, and when his son violated a noblewoman named Lucretia, the Roman people rose in fury. They expelled the monarchy and swore that never again would one man hold unchecked power over Rome. In its place, they built something new, a republic, res publica, the public matter. Instead of kings, 2 consuls were elected each year to share authority, each able to overrule the other. Behind them stood the Senate, 300 elders from Rome's noble families, the patres, giving rise to the term patricians. All others, no matter how wealthy or accomplished, were considered plebeians and barred from high office. This imbalance soon ignited internal struggle. The plebeians formed the backbone of the army, bled for Rome in every war, and yet held no true political power. In protest, they would threaten to leave the city entirely, knowing Rome could not survive without them. Each time, the patricians yielded, granting new rights piece by piece. Tribunes of the people were created, officials empowered to veto Senate decisions. Written laws were introduced so justice could no longer be manipulated by the elite. By 287 BC, the legal barriers between patricians and plebeians had largely dissolved, forging a new identity, not a tribe of nobles and commoners, but a single Roman people. This unity was captured in 4 words, inscribed on standards and monuments across the Republic: Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people. It was more than a slogan, it was a promise of shared destiny, a creed that would bind Rome together through both triumph and catastrophe. Rome's unity would soon be tested by fire. In 390 BC, disaster struck. A tribe of Gauls swept down from the north and captured the city itself. The famed guard dogs failed to sound the alarm, and legend says they were crucified for their negligence. Rome barely survived, saved only when sacred geese alerted the last defenders atop the Capitoline Hill. The humiliation shook the Romans to their core. Instead of collapsing, Rome responded with transformation. The army was reorganized into flexible units called maniples, allowing soldiers to maneuver swiftly and outthink rigid enemy formations. Rome abandoned the usual practice of merely collecting tribute from conquered peoples. Instead, it forged alliances. Defeated communities were bound to Rome through treaties and rewarded with the possibility, one day, of becoming Roman citizens. In return, these allies supplied a steady stream of soldiers. This was the secret weapon of Roman expansion. Every war made Rome stronger, not weaker. Over the next century, Rome subdued rivals across the Italian peninsula. The final resistance came from the Greek city of Tarentum, which hired King Pyrrhus of Epirus, the most renowned general of the age, to halt Roman advance. Though Pyrrhus won battles, his victories were so costly that he famously declared, "Another such win, and I am undone." Rome endured. Pyrrhus withdrew. Italy belonged to Rome, but a greater challenge soon loomed across the sea. Carthage, master of trade and ruler of the western Mediterranean, Rome called them the Punic people. For over 100 years, the two titans fought in the Punic Wars, battles that would determine the fate of civilization. Rome suffered catastrophic defeats, yet refused to surrender. Time and again, they rebuilt fleets, raised new armies, and adapted. In 409 BC, after 3 generations of war, Rome launched a final assault. Senator Cato ended every speech in the Senate, regardless of topic, with the same phrase, "Carthage must be destroyed." And so it was. The city was obliterated, its population enslaved, its land cursed with salt, or so the legend goes. That same year, Rome conquered Corinth and absorbed Greece into what was now not merely a republic, but the rising core of an empire. Rome stood unchallenged across the Mediterranean. Yet with victory came transformation. The conqueror had inherited not just wealth and power, but also the ideas and luxuries of the people they had subdued. Victory brought Rome unimaginable riches, but also planted the seeds of its unraveling. The treasures of Greece and the remnants of Alexander's empire poured into Roman coffers. Greek scholars, artists, and philosophers flooded into Roman estates, transforming the very culture of the conquerors. Greek became the language of the educated elite. Roman nobles spoke of rhetoric, history, and hexameter, emulating the wisdom of Athens, while abandoning the simplicity that once defined the Republic. Yet while the ruling class enjoyed luxury, the foundations of Roman society were quietly collapsing. The endless wars had filled Italy with slaves captured from conquered lands. These slaves worked vast estates owned by the wealthy, producing crops cheaply and at scale. Small farmers, once the backbone of Roman virtue and military strength, could no longer compete. Ruined and displaced, they flooded into the cities, forming a new class the Romans called the proletari, citizens in name only, possessing nothing but their offspring. Meanwhile, the aristocracy grew exponentially richer, buying up abandoned farmlands for a fraction of their worth and turning politics into a battleground for personal gain. The once harmonious idea of Senate and people shattered into two opposed worlds, the wealthy elite and the desperate masses. Into this crisis stepped the Gracchi brothers, tribunes of the people who attempted to restore justice. They introduced laws to redistribute unused public land to the poor and sought to provide subsidized grain for those who could no longer afford to eat. But the Senate, seeing its power threatened, responded violently. Both brothers were killed, along with thousands of their supporters. The message was clear: the Republic would rather spill the blood of its own citizens than reform itself. Civil unrest exploded. Popular generals rose to power by promising land and reward to the poor. Gaius Marius revolutionized the military by enrolling the proletariat into the legions and promising them land in exchange for loyalty. This decision would alter Rome forever, for soldiers would no longer fight for the Republic, but for their commander. Rome had conquered the world. Now its greatest battles would be fought within its own borders. As Rome tore itself apart through internal strife, power drifted away from the Senate and into the hands of military commanders who commanded the loyalty of entire armies. Two giants emerged: Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, conqueror of the East and a champion of the Senate, and Gaius Julius Caesar, governor of Gaul, hailed by his legions as a living legend. Caesar had subdued the tribes of Gaul in a brutal campaign, killing and enslaving millions and extending Roman territory to the Atlantic. He crossed the Rhine into Germania and even ventured to Britain for the first time in Roman history. According to law, a general returning to Rome was required to disband his army before crossing the Rubicon River, the boundary of Italy. To do otherwise was to declare war on the Republic itself. Caesar made his choice. In 49 BC, he crossed the Rubicon with a single legion and uttered the words legend attributes to him. The die is cast. Rome plunged into civil war. Caesar defeated Pompey and crushed any remaining resistance, pursuing his rivals across continents. In Egypt, he placed Cleopatra on the throne, beginning a legendary affair that produced a son, Caesarion. Returning to Rome, Caesar accepted the title Imperator, originally meaning victorious commander, and accumulated every major political office: consul, dictator, tribune of the people. Many believed he intended to crown himself king. On the Ides of March in 44 BC, a group of senators struck him down, hoping to save the Republic. Instead, they sealed its fate. Caesar's heir, his 19-year-old grandnephew Gaius Octavius, raised an army to avenge him. After years of turmoil and the final defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Octavian stood alone as master of the Roman world. He did not call himself king. He took the name Augustus, meaning the revered one, and styled himself princeps, first among senators. But in reality, he wielded absolute power. Under his reign, the Republic quietly faded, and an empire rose in its place. The doors of the Temple of Janus, symbol of war, were closed for the first time in generations. A period of unprecedented peace began. This was the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, an age of prosperity, stability, and imperial grandeur that would last for 2 centuries. Rome had been reborn, not as a republic of citizens, but as the capital of the world. With Augustus, the line of Roman emperors began. Though he claimed to be merely the first citizen, the reality was clear: power was now hereditary. As decades passed, the personality of each emperor shaped the fate of millions. Tiberius, Augustus' successor, ruled with suspicion and fear, unleashing treason trials against anyone who failed to show sufficient reverence. Under Caligula, the empire dipped into madness. He squandered fortunes, declared himself a living god, and is said to have planned making his horse a consul. Claudius, scholarly and eccentric, expanded the empire into Britain, but was reportedly poisoned by his own wife. Then came Nero, who fancied himself an artist rather than a ruler. He executed his mother, persecuted Christians, and was later blamed for a great fire that consumed Rome. By the time Nero took his own life, the dynasty of Augustus had ended in blood and scandal. What followed was chaos. In a single year, 4 men claimed the throne. Power no longer came through lineage or law, but through the sword. The Praetorian Guard, originally created to protect emperors, now made and murdered them at will. Yet amid the turmoil, Rome still expanded. Vespasian, once a humble peasant's son, rose through military ranks to become emperor and restore stability. His son Titus celebrated the capture of Jerusalem and opened the Colosseum to the people. After his death, Titus was deified by a grateful populace. The 2nd century became the high water mark of Roman civilization, the age of the 5 good emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. Under Trajan, Rome reached its greatest territorial extent, ruling from the Atlantic Ocean to the Persian Gulf. Hadrian consolidated these gains, building fortifications such as the famous Wall in Britain. The Pantheon rose in the heart of Rome, crowned with a vast dome unlike anything the world had seen. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote his Meditations amid constant war, embodying the duty-bound spirit that had once defined Rome. His son Commodus would undo it all, Commodus abandoned the responsibilities of rule for the thrill of the arena, fighting as a gladiator while corruption spread unchecked. His assassination plunged the empire into a century-long crisis. Emperors rose and fell in rapid succession, some soldiers, some slaves, one who even bought the throne at auction. Provinces attempted to break away entirely. The unity Augustus had forged was shattering. As the 3rd century unfolded, the empire was unraveling. Civil wars raged, borders crumbled, and entire provinces threatened to break away. It was during this crisis that a man of humble origin, Diocletian, the son of a freed slave, rose through the ranks of the empire army to seize control. He understood that Rome could no longer be governed as a single entity. To save the empire, he would reinvent it. Diocletian divided the realm into 4 regions, each ruled by its own emperor, or Caesar, a system known as the Tetrarchy. Rome itself was no longer the center of power. It became largely symbolic, while real authority shifted closer to the frontiers. The Senate was reduced to a municipal council. The emperor was now addressed as Dominus, master. Citizens became subjects. Farmers were bound to their land, soldiers to their posts. The age of the free Roman citizen had ended. In its place stood a centralized imperial machine. After Diocletian's abdication, the Tetrarchy collapsed into another power struggle. From this chaos emerged Constantine, who claimed a divine vision before his decisive battle for Rome, a cross of light in the sky, and the words, "In this sign conquer." Whether myth or miracle, Constantine acted. He ended the persecution of Christians and declared religious freedom across the empire. What had once been a suppressed faith, driven into catacombs, now rose to prominence. Churches were built alongside temples of Jupiter and Mars. Constantine founded a new capital in the east, Constantinople, the city of Constantine, strategically located between Europe and Asia. It would become the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire for the next 1,000 years. Later, Emperor Theodosius I declared Christianity the official state religion and ordered the closure of pagan temples. The old gods of Rome, Jupiter, Venus, Mars, faded from public life. And with Theodosius' death in 395 AD, the empire was permanently divided, west and east. The east would survive as the Byzantine Empire. The west was left to face the coming storm alone. The Western Empire, now weakened and fractured, faced a force it could no longer control: the great migration of peoples, refugees and warrior tribes, fleeing hunger and invading hordes from the east, poured across Roman borders. Rome, once a city founded by migrants, now struggled against a wave of new arrivals, seeking the very same promise: security, land, a chance to belong. The city of Rome was sacked multiple times. Provinces broke away. Generals proclaimed themselves emperor only to be overthrown months later. In 476 AD, the last Roman ruler, a boy symbolic in name and in fate, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic chieftain. The Western Roman Empire had fallen, yet something far greater endured. Not far from the ruins of the Forum and the Colosseum, a tomb stands, not of an emperor, not a senator, but of a baker named Euries. Born likely a slave of Greek descent, he rose through determination and opportunity to become wealthy enough to commission his own monument. In any other age before Rome, after Rome, a man was destined to die in the station he was born. But in Rome, even a slave could rise to prominence. This is the answer to the question that echoes across time. How did Rome create an empire that lasted over 1,000 years? Because Rome was more than a state. It was a civilization of inclusion, absorbing conquered peoples, extending citizenship, transforming outsiders into Romans. Rome was not simply a place on a map. It was an identity that anyone could join. And though empires rise and fall, identities endure. Latin became the root of half the world's languages. Roman law shaped modern justice. Roman roads still define Europe's pathways. Roman faith gave birth to Western religion. In every alphabet we write, in every legal code, in every republic that claims to serve its people, we still live in the afterlife of Rome. Rome fell. Rome survives. Rome became the world. This was the rise and fall of the greatest civilization in human history. But the story of Rome isn't over. It continues in us. If you're ready to journey deeper into the empires, legends, and lost worlds that shaped our modern age, Then step forward, subscribe, and become part of History Reborn.